Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Mike. You guys are rocking with me on Mike's Intellectual Corner. On today's episode, we are going to be diving back into our World War I series with Epic History TV. This is the Battle of the Somme, 1916. Without further ado, let's just get right into it.
Europe is in the grips of the most destructive conflict yet known, World War I. Much of the fiercest fighting takes place on the Western Front, where British, French and German armies are locked in a bloody stalemate along 450 miles of trenches. There have been millions of casualties, but neither side can break the deadlock. The combination of barbed wire, machine guns and heavy artillery means troops trying to cross no man's land, the open ground between the trenches, are slaughtered en masse. The advantage is always with the defender.
Yeah, I think it's crazy too, like how, in World War I, the Western Front was the deadliest, you know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, the Eastern Front had, obviously a massive amount of casualties, but it was mainly on the Russian side. It was mainly a one-sided battle kind of out there. But except for that one offensive, that the Brusilov offensive, I think it was called. But on the Western Front, all parties are just feeling it, you know what I'm saying? So it was just really deadly. But then on World War II, you had it flip-flopped, and it was the Eastern Front that was super deadly and drawn out and all that stuff. So I just find that kind of interesting how it kind of flip-flopped like that. But yeah.
The advantage is always with the defender. But the Allies are committed to more attacks. They're determined to liberate the parts of France and Belgium that were occupied by Germany in the first months of the war. The British and French have agreed to launch a joint offensive in the summer of 1916. But the Germans strike first. In February, they launch a massive assault on the French fortress city of Verdun. Its defense requires all available French reserves. So the summer offensive will be led by the British, their biggest attack of the war so far. Its chief aim now, to relieve pressure on the French at Verdun.
Yeah, you can just tell by the build-up, you know what I'm saying? This is about to be, probably some of the bloodiest fighting British has ever seen. And that's saying a lot, because obviously we all know they've been in almost every war we can think of in modern era.
The attack will take place along a 25-mile front near the River Somme in July. The new British commander, General Sir Douglas Haig, would prefer to attack near Ypres, where there are clearer strategic objectives. But the Somme is where the British and French armies meet, so where a joint offensive must take place. He would also prefer to wait until his inexperienced divisions have received more training, but the French need his help now. The Somme has so far been a quiet sector, allowing the Germans to build up strong defensive positions. Here the Germans have two formidable defensive lines, with a third under construction. Each consists of 3 lines of trenches, fire, support and reserve, connected by communication trenches. They bristle with machine gun positions and are anchored on fortified villages and strongpoints. In front of the trenches there are thick belts of barbed wire. Below are dugouts, some 10 meters deep, to shelter German troops from artillery fire. Telephone lines buried 6 feet deep allow troops at the front to communicate with artillery batteries during an attack. The German troops that hold the line are well trained, and most are combat veterans.
Yeah, so we're starting to see why the very first day of this battle, and really the whole battle as a whole, was so devastating for the British. I mean, think about it. They're throwing a whole bunch of inexperienced conscripts with no body armor whatsoever, just a gun and a pack, and just tells them to go. You know what I'm saying? Some of them are running, some of them are walking. Either way, they're going, and they're getting told to run towards combat veterans with machine guns. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's essentially suicide. And as we, soon learned that it was suicide. It was just straight up cannon fodder. You know what I'm saying?
Trained, and most are combat veterans. The offensive will be led by the British Fourth Army, commanded by Lieutenant General Sir Henry Rawlinson. With Haig, he draws up the plan of attack. To overcome the Germans' formidable defences, the British will carry out a massive, week-long artillery bombardment with 1,400 guns. This is expected to destroy German barbed wire, flatten trenches, and kill their occupants. 19 mines are also dug under key German strongpoints and filled with explosive, ready to detonate just before the attack begins. To the north, the British Third Army will make a diversionary attack at Gommecourt. The 16 British and French infantry divisions are then expected to take their objectives with minimal opposition.
Boy, if that isn't the understatement of the entire war. They're going to take this, this little tiny piece of land with minimal opposition. Next thing we know, there's close to 60,000 British dead, almost 7,000 French dead, like minimal might.
With minimal opposition. The attack will begin at 7:30 a.m. in broad daylight, so the artillery can observe its fire. British morale is high, and the men are confident of victory. Many of the units taking part are PALS battalions, the eager recruits of 1914, now about to face combat for the first time. But on the eve of the assault, there are worrying reports that the British bombardment has been only partially successful. 1.6 million shells are fired, but due to inexperienced gun crews, a shortage of heavy guns, and faulty shells, much of the German barbed wire remains intact. German defenders, too, are largely unscathed in their deep dugouts. And from captured prisoners and listening in on uncoded telephone calls, the Germans know exactly when and where the British are coming.
Yeah, see, so, I mean, in my opinion, that's another precursor right there, is just the fact that, you had inefficient, inexperienced gun crews, I'm saying, shooting in broad daylight. Like, I understand, obviously I've shot in broad daylight, but they only shot in daylight because they couldn't shoot in the nighttime. And I'm glad now that we have illumination rounds that, it's literally just, you shoot it and it, illuminates the entire, it's like putting up another moon in the sky, pretty much. But the fact that they didn't have that and they had to go during the daylight, inexperienced, they couldn't even have checked their ammunition to make sure that it was good ammunition. They're just shooting whatever they could, and we see what happens. That's crazy, though.
The British are coming. The Allied artillery bombardment reaches its peak at 7 a.m. At 7:20, the British detonate an enormous mine under a German strongpoint, the Hawthorne Redoubt, and British troops rush forward to occupy the crater. At 7:28, further mines are detonated under German strongpoints along the front. At 7:30, the Allied bombardment moves on to the German second line, as British and French infantry begin their advance across no man's land. German troops, meanwhile, race up from their dugouts to set up machine guns. It's an enduring myth that all the British infantry climb out of their trenches and walk steadily towards the German line. A few units do, but most send men out into no man's land before the bombardment lifts, so the final dash toward the enemy line is as short as possible. But in the northern sector, whichever tactics are used, the British are easy targets for German machine gunners, especially where they bunch up to get through the few gaps in the barbed wire. The British infantry advance bravely, but are mown down in their hundreds. Some units do break into the German line. Near Thiepval, the 36th.
And if anything, too, this is also showing us, because obviously the British have a massive army right now that's compared to the Germans and stuff like that, but the Germans have, the experience on the German side is like, you know, unmatched at this point right now. So it's almost kind of crazy to think, to, you know, in any battle, it doesn't matter how many troops you throw at somebody, if they're experienced enough, you're just gonna get mowed down anyway. So, because at the end of the day, we're just meat and soft, so it doesn't matter. It's crazy to think.
Ulster Division captures the Schwaben redoubt, but without support on either flank, it's isolated, and the survivors are forced to retreat that night. On their right, the 32nd Division takes the Leipzig redoubt, while near La Boisselle, the 34th Division captures the Lochnagar mine crater. But these are just small toeholds in the German line, far short of their objectives.
Yeah, these are literally, this is just literally like 3 points within like 3 miles with the front that they have to capture, that they have captured. But I think one of them they lost. But I mean, it's only 7:30 a.m. so let's see how it goes.
Far short of their objectives. In World War I, one of the greatest challenges faced by commanders is getting accurate information about the course of the battle. Reliable field radios haven't been invented yet. Telephone lines are regularly cut by shell fire. So officers must turn to messengers, flag signals, light signals, even homing pigeons, none of which is completely reliable. To get around this problem, during an attack, supporting artillery works to a fixed timetable, moving their fire onto the next line of enemy defences at a set time. So when the infantry start their attack, gunners adjust their fire onto the second line of enemy defences. But if the infantry get held up, the supporting fire keeps moving on according to the timetable. The infantry get left behind and are at the mercy of enemy.
But I can see where that can muddle up a little bit, because if, you know what I'm saying, something happens, you know, the infantry can't relay that to the artillery fire, and something can happen, you can start raining down your own men, which I'm sure happened a lot during World War I because of this problem right here. But that sounds like a pretty big problem.
Of enemy machine guns. Aerial observation by balloons and aircraft can provide valuable information, but rely on good weather and control of the skies. This is why, on the 1st of July, it takes British commanders hours, even days, to find out which attacks have been successful and which have failed. This makes it extremely difficult for them to react to the situation with any speed.
Yeah, and that just shows us why, you know, obviously the officers weren't just letting their men just die there, but obviously we can see why it seemed like that, because they didn't know what was going on the fronts, because they didn't have any. It was, you know, this is over 100 years ago. They didn't have the technology, so days later, you know what I'm saying, you know how many people could die within days? One day, 57,000. So yeah, we can see why that was a huge problem.
With any speed. Further south, there is much greater success. Despite heavy losses, the 21st and 7th Divisions take Mametz and cut off the heavily defended village of Fricourt, which the Germans abandon overnight. On their right, the 18th and 30th Divisions take their objectives, including the village of Montauban, which is secure by 11 AM. Alongside them, the veteran French 20th Corps also takes its first-day objectives, as well as 2,500 German prisoners. The Germans didn't expect the offensive to extend so far south, and are less well prepared. And, crucially, the Allied bombardment is boosted by French heavy guns, which are much more effective at destroying barbed wire and German strongpoints.
Yeah, the British definitely have to thank the French for coming through, because obviously this could have been a lot worse without that. I mean, taking almost 100,000, taking any type of prisoners in this type of a battle is just, amazing. So you definitely got to be able to thank them for that.
Which are much more effective at destroying barbed wire and German strongpoints. At 9:30 AM, French colonial troops lead the attack south of the Somme River. The French seize all their objectives and take 3,000 more prisoners. Despite success in the south, the first day of the Battle of the Somme is a costly failure for the British. German losses for the day are estimated at 12,000 men. The French lose 7,000, but the British suffer a staggering 57,000 casualties, 1/3 of them killed. The 1st of July.
Yeah, how do you keep your morale up after that? You know what I'm saying? As, fresh conscripts, this is your first time at battle. How do you keep, and you somehow, in a miracle, survive that the first day? How do you keep your morale up after that? You know what I'm saying? All your friends are pretty much dead. But you know that if you run away or you just say, F this, you're going to get set up by a firing squad. So you just have to keep fighting. And the toll that takes on somebody, you know what I'm saying? But I think one thing that definitely helped their morale is definitely whenever they saw that tank being introduced, and knowing that, they have something like that on their side that can help them win and stuff. But definitely, it's definitely a question, like, how do you keep your morale up after that?
The 1st of July, 1916, becomes the bloodiest day in the history of the British Army. And it's just the first day in a battle that rages for another 4 months, finally ending in November amid freezing rain and mud. By then, the Allies have advanced 10 miles at a cost of 430,000 British casualties, 200,000 French casualties, and 450,000 German. It makes the Battle of the Somme one of the bloodiest in history. In British popular memory, the Somme is remembered as an unmitigated disaster and tragedy, evidence of the incompetence of British generals and the pointless sacrifice of the gallant soldiers under their command.
Well, you gotta think though too, that's not really, you can't really blame the officers. You have to blame the situation as a whole. Over in Verdun, they were literally losing bodies left and right, which is arguably the second worst battle of the entire war. So, you know what I'm saying? You can't just, they needed help. You can't just, leave them hanging. So you have to throw the soldiers that you have at them. It's honestly, you can't really, in my opinion, you can't really blame the officers. It's mainly the situation as a, you know what I'm saying?
Soldiers under their command. But to those who fought it and those at home, the Battle of the Somme was seen as a success. Casualties were enormous and hard to bear, but across Europe every warring nation was suffering terrible losses, as all commanders struggled to find an answer to trench warfare. And at the Somme, the British had not only helped save their French ally, who went on to defeat the Germans at Verdun, but learned vital lessons about how to fight on the Western Front. Most of all, the Battle of the Somme had been a costly but necessary wearing down of the German army. An immensely painful but vital step on the long road to victory. Maps and research for this.
Alright guys, we're going to end it right there. So yeah, definitely crazy battle, because I mean, you gotta think about it, just 100 years earlier, the most devastating battles in, like, say, the Napoleonic War was like 40,000 dead, you know what I'm saying? So we jump from that to this war, and we're already at 450,000 dead. And that's just from one army. You got another 130,000 dead from the British, and you have, you know what I'm saying? So it's just like, of course, it's a million dead, and just, I don't know, it's just crazy to think about how you go from that to that, and how we still have the population that we do, I guess, you know what I'm saying? But, thank you guys again for joining me on another episode of Mike's Intellectual Corner. I'll see you guys in another one. I'm out.